kwa ukombozi wetu. Tujitoe wenyewe, tusimame pamoja kulinda uhuru na umoja wetu. Enyi Bwana na binti wa Afrika, mwili wa jua, mwili wa anga, tuifanye Afrika mti wa uzima. Tuungane sote, tuimbe pamoja, kuenzi shikamano hatima yetu. Tujitoe wenyewe kupambana pamoja, uhuru na umoja vitawale. Enyi Bwana na binti wa Afrika, mwili wa jua, mwili wa anga, tuifanye Afrika mti wa uzima. Tuungane sote na tujibidishe kutoa kilicho bora kwa Afrika. Chimbuko la wanadamu, chemchemi ya utamaduni, tumaini letu wakati wa mafarakano. Enyi Bwana na binti wa Afrika, mwili wa jua, mwili wa anga, tuifanye Afrika mti wa uzima.
Welcome to Humanist TV Africa. You are watching us live here at Humanist TV Africa. My name is Katom Mukasa. Today we're talking about colonialism, but also colonial relics in Africa. We're talking about the remains of colonialism in Africa, what people treasure, what was left behind, and how it has impacted us. Today, this is the amazing facts about Africa, episode 15, episode 14, and we are talking about colonial relics. Let us look at what we have prepared for you in terms of research about Africa and, of course, colonial relics. I want to encourage you, meanwhile, to subscribe to Humanist TV Africa. We are a non-government organization. We just started doing media work. We are charity organization that does media work. Our name is Humanist TV Africa on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and of course the website. We are Humanist TV Africa. Today, let us look at amazing facts about Africa. Part 14, we are going to be looking at colonial relics. Let's have a look at what we have prepared for you for today's show. Now, we are going to be defining what are relics, for example.
Our own men and our sons have joined the ranks of the stranger. They have joined his religion, and they help to uphold his government. If we should try to drive out the white men in Umuofia, we should find it easy. There are only 2 of them. But what of our own people who are following their way and have been given power? They would go to Umuru and bring the soldiers, and we would be like Abame. He paused for a long time and then said, I told you on my last visit to Mbanta how they hanged Aneto. What has happened to that piece of land in dispute? Asked Okonkwo. The white man's court has decided that it should belong to Nama's family, who had given much money to the white man's messengers and interpreter. Does the white man understand our custom about land? How can he, when he does not even speak our tongue? But he says that our customs are bad, and our own brothers who have taken up his religion also say that our customs are bad. How do you think we can fight when our own brothers have turned against us? The white man is very clever. He came peaceably and quietly with his religion. We were amused at his foolishness and allowed him to stay. Now he has won our brothers, and our clan can no longer act like one. He has put a knife on the things that held us together, and we have fallen apart.
That is from Things Fall Apart by Chinua Achebe. If you have read Things Fall Apart, Chinua Achebe, the longer it is, you are going to be able to understand the context of that video, Things Fall Apart. The white man has divided us using religion, and we are no longer at ease.
1961,
We cannot
France
cooperate.
did something absolutely horrible. France met the Francophone African countries, and I don't even want to use that terminology, but I only use it for the purposes of conversation. The 14 countries which were formally, but still colonized by the French, they were forced to sign a document that they called the Pact for the Continuation of Colonization. You heard me. The Pact for the Continuation of Colonization. If you want your independence, you must sign this. Guinea, Secretary said absolutely not. Mali said absolutely not. France, pack your bags and go on back home. France could not believe it. Could not understand that an African country, these monkeys, do not want to be affiliated to France. They said, we will show you. So history tells us France went into those two countries, took everything that they thought they had brought to those two countries, including the last teaspoon and chair, proceeded to pour concrete into the sewage pipes, completely devastating the two economies. The then newly appointed president of Ghana, Kwame Nkrumah, in his efforts to rescue these two economies, created the first ever union of any African states, Ghana, Guinea, and Mali. But what that did was it made the other African countries realize that if they go against France, this was the fate that was waiting them. So what did they do? Wait the paper. And they signed. What did the pact say? One. The pact said, you monkeys, you don't know how to manage your money. So you shall deposit 85% of your bank reserves with the French Central Bank under the control of the French Minister of Finance. And that France is going to take your deposits from the individual countries, pool them together, invest them in the French stock market under the French name. And you, monkeys, you may or may not know the returns. Latest figures are showing this is still going on since 1958. France today is collecting out of Africa over $500 billion before investing. And when they finish investing this money, for every 14 billion out of Africa, they're recognizing over 300 billion. Now do the math. So when it's actually said and done, France is taking out of Africa trillions of dollars every year, and we, the poor Africans, are gladly giving it to France. And the same France has the audacity to look at us and call us poor people. 1958. They went further with the pact. You say, we will also print your own money. We will print your money for you. They instituted what they were calling the CFA, special currency for the African countries, and that only France can print that money for you. They went on to say all the contracts, large contracts, public and private, French companies have the first right of refusal. All your minerals discovered, yet to be discovered, France has the first right of refusal. Now, my brothers and sisters, if one of you was to wake up one morning and you're president of one of those countries, and your chief of staff walks in first day and starts reading you out the do's and don'ts as stipulated by the Pact for the Continuation of Colonization, what power do you have? None. And the same countries that are stealing from Africa, they have the audacity to look at Africa and say, Africans, what's wrong with you? Why can't you all take care of yourselves? Well, let's start by leaving our $500 billion on the continent. But what they're doing instead, they want to throw you with a smoke screen. Your African leaders are corrupt. Well, you know, I gave you that. I mean, not all African leaders are corrupt. Africa is a family. No family is complete without crazy Aunt Sally and crazy Uncle Tom. Nobody's perfect. Okay, fine, so I'll give you that. Their own figures are saying 50 billion is getting out of Africa from corruption. Fine, I give you that. But you do not want me to engage in a conversation that's only limited to the $50 billion out of Africa through corruption. First, you don't tell me where it's going. You simply tell me it's getting out of Africa. But secondly, there's a bigger thief. You got two thieves, one with a briefcase with 50 billion and the other thief with a briefcase with 500 billion. I am a smart woman. You want me to ignore the one with 500 billion and put all my energies on a suitcase with 50? And by the time the one with 500 billion is done investing, we are talking trillions. Now, do you see how quickly the funds out of Africa from corruption become the larger chunk under the table? And they want you to stay under the table. So you never have to talk about what is on the table. We must wake up, Africans. We must think about our situations. How did we get here? Are we willing to let France...
Thank you very much. Why do I call this show Colonial Relics? We have heard from the two videos. The first one is from the great author Chinua Achebe. Things Fall Apart is the book. No longer it is, you can also look at it. The people in Africa were colonized. From the 1800s, Berlin Conference and others, they are colonized. A new religion is brought. They call themselves Christians with factions. These are Catholics, these are Protestants, these are Seventh-day Adventists, Methodists, all the nonsense they call themselves. Then there are Muslims who call themselves Muslims because someone told them they have to believe in Allah. Now, what are relics of colonialism? When you look at a simple definition, something treasurable, something left behind, maybe something of religious value, economic value, historical value, is a relic. Something historical. It might have gone the days, but you still have it. Now, Africa was occupied by these countries. 7 countries divided Africa like a hot cake at the Berlin Conference. 7 countries. Britain, France, Portugal, Spain, Germany, Belgium. These countries divided themselves to have Africa. Britain took the biggest share of Africa. The biggest piece of Africa was given to Britain with over 30 plus countries. France came out with another good share. Britain had more countries in their pocket. France took a sizable share. As we speak today, France still controls 14 African countries. They will never tell you this, and I'm going to show it to you. France still controls 14 African countries. France controls their money. France controls their economy. 14 African countries. They determine their currency. They must bank with them. The minister in France must determine how the monies are spent, the value of monies in an African country. And they call it independence. Colonial relics. As we speak today, we are proud to know better English. Look at these images, for example. We are proud to know better English. better Spanish, better Portuguese. These are colonial relics of Africa. Give me these images, buyer. What do I mean when I say relic? Number one, an object treated with great respect because of its connection with, say, saint or martyr. Number two, something left behind after decay or disappearance. Relics of ancient cities, for example. Today, we're talking about relics, but in a different perspective. Let's look at these images very fast, buyer. And then, this is Africa. How was Africa divided by these people? 7 countries took of Africa. Look at that map, you'll know who took what. Buyer, let us have more images very fast. Look at the flags of these countries. Why should a country have an independence? It means this country was occupied, was ruled, was exploited. Look what the ethnicity in these countries. The Arabs, where did they come from to occupy Africa? Were they always part of Africa? Now you look at all these other tribal settings and their influence. Now look at this map here. What does it show you? The languages that are spoken in Africa. We have the Afrikaner. Go down to South Africa, you're going to see it. You have the French. Look at how many people in Africa speak French. Look at Arabic language. Majority of people in Africa, in fact, speak Arabic. Did you know that? That about 17% of the 1.2 billion people in Africa speak Arabic, 17%. English takes also another good share. Look at the map and where English is indicated in red. Those are the areas where English is predominant. And look at African traditional languages, but also look at Swahili. Swahili is also one of those big languages. About 5% of people in Africa actually speak Swahili. But Arabic language is the biggest. Now, this map here shows you which languages are being spoken in Africa. Swahili, Hausa, Portuguese, French, English, and Arabic, of course, taking the biggest share, Lingala and others. But basically, what are the lyrics we see here? We see English there, we see French there, we see Portuguese there, and these other languages. These are colonial relics left behind by the colonizer. And we are so happy to have them as part of our history now. Now, colonization of Africa by European countries, I've told you that 7 countries occupied Africa: Britain, and of course French, Portuguese, Spaniards, Italians, and Belgians, and of course this occupied Africa. Now, in this map, as you can see, the bigger map on your screen shows you which country took what. For example, you see that Belgium took Congo, and of course Britain took the biggest numbers of countries in Africa. Britain took much of Africa in their pocket. And of course, French took their territories, especially in that region, as you can see, the French West Africa. French took its region. Britain took so much. We see Anglo-Saxon, Anglo influence there in Africa. And now we're talking about French Algeria. We're talking about Niger, Chad, French Sudan. You see French, Italian North Africa. You see Egypt there being Anglo-Egyptian Sudan. You see, of course, Anglo influence in these other countries. Of course, we've seen Italy in Eritrea. We see Belgium in Congo. We've seen, of course, Germany in East Africa. Of course, that was Tanganyika then. We see Portuguese in West Africa. We see German in Southwest Africa. These are the countries. If you know that country, these are the countries which occupied them. And we've seen, of course, as I've told you, that most of these countries were occupied by Britain, were occupied by France, and of course, a few of them were occupied by Italy. Belgium had just a few, and of course, Spain just a few of these countries. Now, I'm showing you who occupied what. Now, look at Francophone Africa. These countries you see on your screen were occupied by France: Djibouti, Chad, Benin, Niger, Mali, Senegal, and others. I told you as we speak today that 14 countries in Africa continue to pay a tax we call colonial tax. They will never tell you this. 14 countries in Africa pay a tax, colonial tax, to France. And once the presidents refuse to cooperate, they are always removed from power. Coups in these countries are the common thing to see. There are coups after coups in these 14 countries in Africa. And then we say that these countries are independent. The question is, are these countries formerly occupied by the French government independent? Now, we see the percentage of people speaking French in Francophone Africa. We are looking at relics, remember. Relics. What was left behind that we are still holding on? Relics. Look at the countries in Africa that actually speak French as a language, French as a language. Algeria, Tunisia, Morocco, Mauritania, Senegal, Guinea, Burkina Faso, Ivory Coast, Gabon, Congo, Cameroon, Benin, Niger, Mali, Tunisia. These are the countries that are speaking French. We're talking about colonial relics, Djibouti, Central African Republic, Tunisia, and others. I told you that Britain took the majority countries in Africa. Now look at these countries that are speaking French, and I proudly saw doing that. And actually, if you go there and you cannot speak French, they are going to say you are ignorant. If you went to Uganda, you don't speak English, they'll say you are ignorant. Colonial relics that continue to affect Africa. These are the countries on our screen that are actually controlled by France in a way. Let us continue looking at these other figures. Now, let us look at Britain, Anglophone African Network. Anglophone African Network. I told you that Britain ruled the majority countries in Africa, occupied, ruled, and took over. Majority countries in Africa. Britain got the lion's share, took the majority. Let us look at another map very fast. Yes. Now here, what do we see? We see countries and how they were occupied. We see countries and the way they were occupied. Now, when you look at that map critically, I'll give you a minute to look at that map critically. When you look at that map, what do you see? You see that many countries, as you can see, were occupied by Britain, and other countries were occupied by France. So Britain and France took the biggest share of this country. But again, I also tell you something else. Show me the next map. I'll show something else in the next map. Yes, that one. This map shows you religion. I told you religion is a relic of colonialism. They always say it in Africa. Of course, there was native religions, but religion, Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, these are left behind of colonialism. Now, Christianity, if you look at that map, Christianity takes the biggest share, partly, but no, Islam actually has the biggest numbers. If you go to the statistics, you'll be surprised that actually Muslims and Christians are rivaling in terms of numbers. That the Muslims are occupying much of the northern part of Africa, but the Christians also are occupying much of the middle and the southern part of Africa. So they are competing. More soon, I should tell you, we shall be having more Muslims than actually Christians. The numbers keep on changing. Sometimes we may say we have more Muslims in Africa, and sometimes numbers can try to favor Christians. But I tell you, Muslims are taking over. Islam is taking over much of Africa right there in terms of numbers. As you can see, that map here, the second map here on regions show you that actually Christianity covers 50% of Africa. Christianity is 50.9%. So majority of people in Africa are Christians. But the Muslims are following very fast with 43%. So Christians are more, but also Muslims at 43%. And of course, others are only 5%. Now, the other map shows you major regions in Africa today and major regions in Africa yesterday. Now, when you look at indigenous Africa of 1900, we had many indigenous regions taking over. But Africa today has more Christians at 50% and more Muslims at 43%. Africa today has more Christians. Africa today has more Muslims and less people that believe in indigenous religions. That is it about colonialism and colonial relics. What was left behind in Africa are the religions. What was left behind in Africa are the divisions. What was left in Africa are the political parties, the politics that we copied from Western countries. Now, what are other relics we talk about? We see artifacts of Africa in museums in Europe, in museums in Britain, in museums in the US, in museums in Netherlands, Germany, and other countries. These are artifacts that were stolen from Africa. I'll repeat, these are artifacts that were made by our ancestors and stolen from Africa, taken to these museums to make money for these countries. Now, these are colonial relics we talk about and say, is it good to have our artifacts back? Or we should simply go to these countries and watch what our ancestors did in pre-colonial Africa. This is it for me. This is it for us. Today, I've been talking about amazing facts about Africa, looking at colonial relics. What was left behind of Africa? This is what we have seen in today's show. Thank you so much for watching, and I want to encourage you to keep watching Humans TV Africa. Keep subscribing and keep the channel popular. Remember, we shall be back with yet another show. See you in the next one. Thank you for watching. See you in the next one. Bye-bye.